Hi, everyone. I know it's 6 o'clock. We're going to wait just a few more minutes to make sure that everyone can sign in. And then I'm going to make sure that you can all hear me. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Kelly Freimeyer from Gamble Design Collaborative. I'm going to be doing the presentation tonight, and I wanted to let you all know that this is a recorded public meeting. This is an approved format for a neighborhood meeting based on the COVID social distancing that we're doing. So this meeting will be recorded, and the city will have that recording provided to them. So going to give everyone just a few more minutes to make sure that we're all in. Everyone should be entering the meeting on mute. If there is a need to ask a question, we will have a time for that at the end of the presentation. What I would like to do is go ahead and start that presentation, and then there'll be a portion at the end for any kind of questions and answers. We have two methods that we can use for that. We can press your space bar down, and that will allow you to ask a question, or there is a chat feature. For most of you, this will be in the bottom right hand side of your screen, and that chat allows you to ask a question that I can see and answer. For you Mac users, that's going to be at the top of your screen. Okay. So if you're just joining us, we're going to wait just a couple of more minutes to make sure everyone has an opportunity to join. Again, I'm Kelly Freimeyer. I'm going to be presenting tonight on behalf of Gamble Design Collaborative. And this is a recorded public meeting. All right. Everyone that's joined us, you should be able to see a PowerPoint presentation. If everyone can see my screen right now, it's just some text. So if I can, if you nod some heads, and we'll make sure that everybody can see that one. Let's see here. Let me make sure this gets bigger here. Okay, that should have made it a little bigger for everyone. Hopefully that's easier to read. Okay. So I believe we may have everyone that has registered for the meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and start our presentation. Again, just to introduce myself, I'm Kelly Freimeyer. I am representing Gamble Design Collaborative tonight, the applicant making the presentation. And everyone should be coming into this meeting muted. We'll have a portion of the meeting reserved for questions at the end. Should be short presentation. I don't have a whole bunch of slides for you. When we get to that question and answer section, there's two methods you can ask a question. You can type a question into the chat feature at any time, and I can see that. That's typically at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Otherwise, at that question and answer time, you can press your space bar to come off mute and ask your questions. So go ahead and start here. So first, big question, what are we actually asking for? So this is a neighborhood meeting to talk about a change that we're proposing in the Envision Franklin text. So we have two documents that govern our development patterns here in Franklin. The zoning ordinance, which has all of the very specific development criteria for our site plans and construction drawings. But then we have the Envision Franklin document that is our long-range vision, our long-range plan for the city. That has maps and text, both to talk about where we would like the direction of our development to head, and it looks out pretty far into the future. So what we're talking about here tonight is a text amendment to this document. So it's not actually a site plan proposal, although we will have a site connected to that that we'll talk a little bit about. But the main objective here is looking at the a text change to this visioning document. So the specific portion of the Envision Franklin text that we're proposing a change is in the industrial flex design concept. So you can see on the larger map on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a few areas in the city where this design concept exists. One of those areas, which is highlighted for you, is called the Liberty Pike Eddy Lane Special Consideration Area in the industrial flex design concept, kind of a big description there. But that's where the section of text occurs where we're proposing the change. So it only impacts that special consideration area. So that special consideration area, again, is highlighted in red here for you. Everything that is in that area is currently zoned light industrial. And then as you can see over here, some of our additional overlays for the properties. So what does the text say? The text that we're talking about defines what we expect the development pattern to be in the future. The specific text that we were looking at was regarding multifamily uses. The original text, as you can see, I've got it in bold, says that existing residential is needing to be adjacent to any property that would be proposing a residential multifamily use that may be appropriate in this area. We feel like some conditions in this district have changed, and we would like to propose the removal of that proximity requirement. So you can see below where we have the proposed text that removes that requirement that new multifamily be adjacent to existing residential. So what we're actually proposing, the change is highlighted in yellow there, and that multifamily uses would be able to develop on these parcels, but potentially would have additional buffering requirements. So why do we think things have changed? What do we think would change this text? So the construction of the data center on a property to the south of this district was surrounded by residential. Not many of the other properties are. You've got railroad and road that kind of separates the others. So it limits the properties that would have had the ability to start that transition. And when you start looking at redevelopment in this area, there are other considerations that would make multifamily something that would could be considered at a site plan and development plan stage. So those are the conditions that have changed here. What it's not doing, it's not changing the zoning for any of the properties. It's not putting any additional restrictions or changes to any of the allowable uses that would or would not have already been allowed here. All we're simply proposing is where there was a proximity requirement for a parcel to be considered for multifamily development, that proximity requirement be removed and allow the area to develop as parcels become available and other redevelopment occurs in the area. And that takes into account that there may be an opportunity to provide additional buffers as that transition happens. Specifically, as I mentioned, these text changes and map changes are usually associated with specific parcels. In this instance, we are proposing at a future date a development that will occur at a parcel, the intersection of Eddy Lane and Reynolds, looking at a multifamily residential property there. Again, this is not a site plan stage. We have several steps to go for that, but this is the subject property that kind of prompted the request. Some of the other things that are kind of important about the redevelopment in this area that's highlighted in the Envision Franklin text talks about connectivity, specifically the pedestrian routes, creating a very safe and strong corridor, sidewalks, connections down to Fort Granger and to the elementary school, and then even back to the factory and some of downtown Franklin. So this creates the ability to make sure that those connections get reinforced through development. And then as another area in the text mentioned the industrial character being preserved. This is some character images of the type of development we would expect to see. So it feels a little bit more urban, a little bit more industrial, and kind of fits the character image of this industrial flex area. As I mentioned, there are many next steps for this. For the Envision Franklin amendment, the text amendment we're talking about tonight, we're at our neighborhood meeting stage, and we will expect to be heard at the Planning Commission meeting on June 25th. And then before this plan or any plan on this parcel would be able to get started, that would kick off with the development plan. And that has its whole process of neighborhood meetings, Planning Commission, BOMA, and then site plan and construction drawings. So this is just kind of the first section here that would kick that off, really starting looking at the land use plan and making sure that that's consistent. So again, I'm going to put the original text and our proposed text back. So this is, we had a couple of people that joined us a little late, so just wanted to put this text back up and then open up our discussion for some questions. Again, there's two ways that we can best do questions. There's a group, or there's a chat feature at the bottom of your screen where you can type in a question and I can read and respond to that one. You can also ask your question verbally. You can press your space bar down and we can get that answered for you. You should be able to come off mute when you do that.
And Kelly, this is Greg Gamble, and thank you everybody for joining us as well. And thank you, Kelly, for your presentation. Kevin Estes is also on the line with us, and Kevin Estes is with Miles Creek Partners, LLC, and Land Solutions. Kevin, would you mind just kind of introducing yourself, telling everybody a little bit about what you're considering for the property and maybe the potential relationship with the Franklin Housing Authority and what their role would be in this?
Yeah, hello. I'm with Land Solutions, and I'm partnering with the Miles River Properties, not Creek, but Miles River, on this. I have worked on several developments in Franklin, and as um, Franklin grows, I continue to looking for opportunities that I hope would improve and enhance Franklin. I had been meeting with the owners of the factory in discussions over several things, not necessarily taking over the factory, but just meeting with them. And as I'm walking through the factory, I'm saying, I'm with Greg, and I'm saying, you know, this place is cool and it's got a lot of history. And I go to the pilgrimage every year, and I love this area of Franklin. And I said, it needs more people to be able just to walk up and have breakfast in the morning, or just walk up and have lunch. And Greg said, well, you know, I'd like you to sit down and meet with a gentleman who runs with the housing authority, the Franklin Housing Authority. Is that the correct?
Yes, that's right. Derwin Jackson.
Yeah, Derwin. So I met with Derwin, and he said, you know, Kevin, we're really looking to do something that in the multifamily area to help with rent. And I said, well, a buddy of mine, Miles, who owns Miles River, which is Capital Group, has a lot of experience in this. Let me talk about this. So we came up with this idea to put some apartments here with some live work, because the factory is absolutely full with office. They don't have any ability to they don't have any office for lease right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this is close. You can walk to Fort Granger. There's an elementary school behind us. We don't have a sidewalk up to, oh, Greg, I'm dying today with the road names. Is it Liberty?
Sure, Liberty Pike. We would like to add a sidewalk to Liberty.
Sidewalk, but we could extend a sidewalk from Liberty Pike to this property. And the owner of the property owns the factory as well. So when talking to him, he said, hey, I got this property. And it all kind of came together saying, well, this is a good idea. Let's talk to the staff about it. The staff seemed to think this was had some merits to it, and they were really anxious to try to find the ability to work with any type of affordable options in Franklin, quite honestly, because they're tough. I mean, so many people live outside of Franklin and come to Franklin to work. So trying to find housing that's affordable for that demographic has been a challenge a little bit. And so we was looking over the Envision Franklin, and we're like, oh, this is like, it's just right away from residential, which really would be either run right along Liberty Pike or where the data center is. Anywhere else is kind of blocked off in this area. So that's how we came about to this proposed text amendment. If this goes through, then, you know, like Kelly said, we have a long runway in front of us on plan design and working with the community, what this looks like, and the mix of affordable and market rent and the office and that other stuff. But this is kind of a first step, and it's an exciting first step for us. So Greg, thanks for that opportunity, and I'll kind of turn it back over.
Thank you. So does anyone have any questions of us?
I have a question. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
How much land is considered in the site?
Right at 6 acres, 5.9.
Okay. Kelly said a lot, but I want to know, tell me again what you have proposed for that site. Is it multifamily? Is it office? It's not everything you showed in the pictures. What do you have proposed?
It's a combination of multifamily with live work on the bottom level. And Greg might speak a little bit better to that, but that was our intention, is to along Reynolds and
Eddie Lane.
Eddie Lane, thank you very much. Kind of framing Eddie Lane and part of Reynolds is to have, you know, live work offices or offices on the bottom level where tenants who live there could lease those spaces. And then the rest of it would be multifamily. And to handle the parking, we would build a parking deck between the back of this side and that
Power
substation.
substation.
Yeah.
6 acres doesn't seem to be very much land to take care, Kevin, of all you just mentioned.
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples because my office is in Berry Hill, and right outside of Berry Hill down 8th Avenue, they've done 3 large mixed-use developments somewhat similar to this, and they sit on average 4.5 acres and have 300 units. We're not asking nowhere near 300 units,
Mm-mm.
but I'm just saying.
How many units are you asking for?
Oh,
We're still studying that right now, Alderman Martin. We're still studying that right now. If you
but
look
I don't
at,
want to leave her totally hanging. It would be above 180 and below 240, somewhere in that range, depending on the office mix.
I don't want to hoard these questions, but
No, I'm glad to answer.
I do have a lot. Where is, can you point to so that I can see where that research center is?
The data center is at this very, can you see my pointer? Yes, it's right down here. Can
why don't you flip back to the aerial
yeah,
photograph?
let me flip back here. So you can see I've put a star on it for you. And that's what's really wrapped with the majority of the single family homes. There, of course, is some residential across the street and across over this direction, but immediately adjacent to this special consideration area, this is really where the residential exists. So with that new construction and the expectation that that's not going to be redeveloping soon, the proximity requirement that is in Envision Franklin does restrict any of the other parcels that would want to explore multifamily as an option.
They couldn't develop.
They couldn't develop
based upon the current policy as multifamily.
So what we're proposing is just to remove that proximity requirement and allow any of the considerations in this special area, any of the parcels to consider multifamily and not have that proximity requirement.
All right, could you show me, Kelly, where all of that property around between the data center and your site, can you show me just with your little hand where all of the multifamily would be?
So specifically the property that Mr. Estes is looking at is highlighted here in red. So it would be on the corner of Eddy Lane and Reynolds.
Between Reynolds and that power center that's out there,
Yeah, so that's really what we're talking about as far as the property that we're considering that is being tied to this request. But the request being an Envision Franklin amendment would apply to all of the properties that are within this consideration area.
When will this come before the joint planning and development?
It would go before the Planning Commission January the 25th for Envision Franklin, and if it's supported
June.
June 25th at the Planning Commission. If it's supported,
Different.
we would have, like they have a neighborhood meeting in July and then August in front of the joint conceptual workshop.
The meeting in July for joint conceptual.
We would have a development plan meeting, like neighborhood meeting in July, and then probably August to the joint conceptual workshop.
Flip back to the text here. Was there anyone else that I haven't seen in any questions in the chat feature? So I didn't know if anyone else, you can press your space bar down to ask a question.
Has this gone before planning staff?
Yes, ma'am. We've met with planning staff to discuss it with them, and they concurred with what Kelly stated, that there are very limited opportunities to comply with the existing language, which says multifamily residential uses may be appropriate for properties adjacent to existing residential uses. A lot of the properties that are directly adjacent to existing residential uses, mainly the data center, was just constructed. So they concurred that giving more flexibility in this area would make some sense. They can see that this area could become more mixed use along Eddy, especially with its proximity to the factory and to the park, the city park, with the adjacent multifamily that's along Liberty Pike. So they thought that it was reasonable request to, I'm putting words in their mouth, but reasonable request to the Planning Commission to consider this.
And we did work with staff to create the proposed text. I went back and forth a little bit with staff to make sure that we had the wording that they felt comfortable with. And this is the end result of that. You know, there are several things that we felt like should be consideration factors when we're talking about a transition with any infill properties, really. And some of those are the corridors, Eddy Lane specifically, and you know, how that's going to the pedestrian connectivity and things there start to change, and should be a consideration factor, not just the proximity to the residential that was over by the data center.
And the point of showing what some of the architecture might look like is not that we've made a decision or that we have an architectural design at this point, but that the factory, Jameson Station, should really be speaking more to the style and design of the architecture than, say, Bell Historic, which kind of departs from that more industrial character.
I know the neighbors on Eddy Lane, in and around Eddy Lane, are very desirous of a sidewalk.
Yeah, we need it
to attach to the new trail on 96. And you know, that I don't know whether that would have to come before or during a change on Eddy Lane, because that must be done. That just must be done.
So one thing, when we went and looked at this property, like I said, we was meeting with, I apologize. I just started like 4 days ago, and I cannot.
You're fine.
Words in my brain. Greg, who is it?
We don't know the difference, Kevin. We don't know the Go right on, say whatever you do.
Perfect.
Well, we met with City of Franklin planning staff and talked about connecting sidewalks from Fort Granger to Liberty Pike. I know that there are a few new homes that are built along Eddy that have started portions of sidewalk. The data center has constructed a sidewalk across its frontage. And Alderman Martin, we can just look to see where the other gaps are and see if there's anything we can do to help participate. But it may be something that we could look at with the city for sure.
Well, and one thing I was going to say, Greg, before I tripped up over my own words, is we really have a desire to connect the sidewalk to Liberty Pike, and we may very well be able to connect the sidewalk to the data center so that there is one continuous sidewalk from Liberty Pike to the data center. I can't go all down Eddy Lane, obviously, but that would be a good portion. And then I believe when we met with the mayor, he mentioned that, I don't want to misquote him, that the city has got approval to build the sidewalk down Franklin. Is it Franklin Road down to?
Yes, it's from Franklin Road, from the factory to downtown. Yes.
So I am big on trying to get some connectivity because once again, I really think the factory is one of the bigger benefactors of this proposed development here.
Well, if there are no other questions, thank you so much for your time tonight. Feel free to email us. You should have my email address in the letter that you received. We're happy to respond to questions that way as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. All right.